Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Jen Psaki, White House spokesbeing, was on this podcast called Pod Save America, which is hosted by three Obamaist soy boys. And she was talking about the characterizations. She was responding to the characterizations of the Biden administration, like so many of the new Marxists in charge of Big City America, Big Blue City America. Being soft on crime, I guess is the phrase. I'd be more aggressive than that. Siding with criminals over law-abiding residents of these communities. And she basically dismissed this as, Fox News is doing these stories and they live in an alternate universe where the responsible networks like CNN and MSNBC are focused on Putin's aggressive posture towards Ukraine, which is where everybody should be focused, so she said. What does this mean, this soft on crime stuff? So at the press briefing yesterday, she was asked about her dismissal of the accusation the Biden administration is soft on crime by some Fox reporter not named Ducey. And this is what she said in defense.
In the American Rescue Plan, there was additional funding to support local cops programs, something that every single Republican voted against. I said in that interview that I know they don't like it when we call that out. I'm going to keep calling that out because that's a fact. Also, President Biden has proposed a significant increase in funding for local cops programs in his budget, more than the prior president. That's a fact. So if those facts are uncomfortable, I'm sorry for people who feel they need to be critical, but the president has been a longtime advocate of addressing crime. He's never been for defunding the police. Our Department of Justice has increased funding, has put in place support for strike forces. And the other fact that is never talked about in these Fox packages, maybe in this one, is the fact that gun crime is a major driver of crime across the country. Also a fact. So those are pieces, I think, in that moment I was speaking to. And again, we're about the facts here, and addressing crime is something that is a root of the president's agenda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're about the facts here too, Jen, honey baby.
We don't spread misinformation.
And so the fact is, the idea you throw some funding into a $4 trillion socialist tax and spend-a-thon for local police, and you suggest that Republicans were voting against funding local police departments is disingenuous at best, number one. Number two, the idea that federal support for state and local police is the real issue here is a lie. That is a misdirection play. We're not talking about that, and money is not the issue. We're talking about the president's fellow travelers who are in charge of these big blue cities, who are for defunding the police. We're talking about a Black Lives Matter movement that ran roughshod over the country's major cities in 2020 and since, frankly, as well as runs roughshod over the Democrat Socialist Party that is talking about defunding the police, that has advanced a defunding of the police at the state and local level, which is where a majority of the funding is derived. So the whole, we threw some money at police in this big $4 trillion socialist tax and spend-a-thon, we couldn't get through a Democrat socialist-controlled Senate, and we have strike forces that we fund through the Department of Justice, and so that means we're for the preservation of law in America's cities is, again, disingenuous. It is talking past the issue, and she knows it. It is about, number one, civilian authorities backing the police to enforce the law, and number two, having prosecutors not funded by George Soros who are interested in incarcerating repeat and habitual is redundant, but habitual violent offenders. And that's what Biden won't speak to. Any of those mayors and prosecutors, any of these agitators, professional agitators like Black Lives Matter, and that's what Biden won't speak to, what she won't speak to. That's what the country is addressing. So who's in the bubble, Jen? For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Batya Ungar-Sargon. She's deputy opinion editor at Newsweek and author of Bad News: How Woke Media is Undermining Democracy. Batya, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you've recently written a piece when progressives side with criminals, but you just heard Jen Psaki say that you got it all wrong. This administration is tough on crime. Look at the money we've tried to spend.
Yeah, it's so gross. I mean, I'm sure you guys know this, but more children were shot as victims of gun violence in Chicago than died of COVID in the entire 2021. Like, where is the outrage on behalf of those children? It's all in Black neighborhoods. You know, where is the Black Lives Matter movement? Where are the people who claim to care about these kids? It's just disgusting. And then you have, you know, Brian Stelter on CNN calling crime, quote unquote, imagined drama by Fox News, because Fox are the only ones who will talk about it. There's a total taboo on covering crime because it makes white progressives feel uncomfortable to see, you know, the perpetrators of crime be people of color, and they'd rather sentence Black children to be murdered in their beds than talk about this epidemic of crime. It's all about class. I'm sure you guys agree. You know, Jen Psaki sitting there telling people to drink margaritas and take in a kickboxing class while downplaying crime and downplaying the fact that Americans are afraid to leave their homes in neighborhoods she would never dream of walking into.
I know. And also, but BLM isn't here on the scene every time a 2-year-old shot, or we even had a 1-month-old murdered last year because there's no money to make from it. And that aspect of BLM is never, you know, they're only going to come in when there's possible litigation where they can, you know, appoint their own attorneys to make money.
Yeah, and you can really see, like, how much of the media the progressives and the liberals control, because this is, like you guys said, this is all happening in Democratic-led cities, and so they don't want to criticize their own until there's a complete taboo on talking about it. You know, Jen Psaki saying, you know, let me remind you that this is, you know, a lot of this has to do with gun crime, as if gun control is the answer. Like, these crimes are happening in cities where guns are the most regulated, right? Like Chicago, for crying out loud. If they can't blame their own, you know, their opponents, they literally will not talk about it. And there's just such a class element to this, because these rich white liberals, these progressives, they vote in people like Alvin Bragg, they vote in people like Chisa Bodine, who are decriminalizing crimes and encouraging, essentially, you know, the breaking of the rule of law, while these people who vote these people in, you know, they vote in people who will not prosecute the mentally ill who are attacking people on subways, and these are people who never have to ride the subways themselves, right? They have 2 SUVs parked in their driveways, right? So from the safety of their, like, gated communities, they're sentencing poor Black people to live with crime, with violent crime, and then they have the nerve to go on TV and gaslight poor people about what they're seeing with their own eyes in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, I like your focus on the upper income white leftists, because they're just the worst people in the world. And there's a good piece by Holman Jenkins in the Wall Street Journal the other day, and it's talking about this. It's in the context of climate change and that movie Don't Look Up, but some of his observations are a cross issue. He writes, millions of us have grown, us Americans, have grown too comfortable pronouncing ourselves passionate about a problem we don't even bother to understand. It points to a sickness of our time, excessive conformity, as if all insecurities can be banished by loudly declaring one's fealty to the dogma du jour. And that's what you get from these white, rich leftists, is loudly declaring one's fealty to the dogma of the time. So it's the white supremacy, it's Black Lives Matter, it's anti-racism, and I'm doing all that, so I don't need to be bothered. I don't have to be bothered with the carnage going on in the streets of Chicago in big cities. I don't have to be bothered by the COVID apartheid policies and the like.
I mean, it really is carnage. You know, again, you know, more children were the victims of gun violence in Chicago than died of COVID last year. Like, how do they not care? There's just such insouciance about it. There's just absolute apathy because, you know, for white progressives, Black people are victims, And so when you see a black perpetrator, black person shooting a black baby, like you said, black child, they cannot speak about it. Like they have no language to address it, and they would rather sentence those children to be killed. But okay, let me ask you guys this though. Something that really bothers me is, okay, we can all agree that the Democrats have abandoned poor people, have abandoned the working class, have abandoned black people en masse. I think we all agree on that. My question is this: why aren't Republicans going into Oakland, going into the South Side, and saying, hey, I'm going to run on school choice and law and order. I'm going to make sure your child goes to the best school in Chicago and doesn't have to walk through gang violence to get there and can get there in one piece without being shot. Like, I think that's a winning platform in the black community right now, but you don't see Republicans. There's such an opportunity here. There's such an opportunity here, but you just don't see them taking advantage of it. Why is that?
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, this
They've
is
tried.
a long time lament, and I think there's a struggle among Republicans for the language. To your point on, I think it runs in both directions, and I think there's a lot of Republicans that are line reciters too, and you have to go in and make an argument to have credibility. You have to exhibit an understanding that goes beyond just saying school choice and fun police. That's not enough. I mean, there really needs to be a development. So Michael Brennan Doherty had this good piece in the National Review about the new white flight. And he writes, he's talking about upper middle class white leftists who are making a play for dominance of the Democrat Party the way they dominate all the cultural institutions in America. And he writes, where upper middle class whites have the upper hand, they are the ones defunding the police, even as many police forces are now majority minority in their composition. It was upper middle class white politics that led Seattle to cut the wages of its first black female police commissioner and funding for the department as a whole. The subsequent exodus of qualified cops and the deadly disorder of the autonomous zone there were the result. He just goes on to talk about sort of the toxic politics of those wealthy white leftists, where they protect themselves in their enclaves and they use government as a shield to protect themselves, and they use it as a sword against their political enemies, while essentially positioning themselves and characterizing themselves as the vanguard for the downtrodden. And it's a big scam, but if you don't go in to black churches and put it point blank to civic leaders in black and Latino neighborhoods, then shouting school choice and tough on crime from the safety of your enclave doesn't have any currency.
Right. No, totally agree with you. Yeah, my book is my whole book is about that scam, is about people who are, they are using the real pain of black and brown communities, the real pain of the working class, in order to enrich themselves and in order to abandon the working class, and in order to sort of smear at the people and smear the very people that they're abandoning as racists, right? And I think you're seeing a lot of this in the sort of the coverage of the trucker convoy, right? The ways in which, there's a class warfare there happening, where working class people are saying enough with these, like you said, apartheid mandates, right? We're not going to stand up to it. We're not going to take this anymore. And immediately they find the one Confederate flag, the one Nazi flag, which were probably psyops, right? And smear 100,000 peaceful protesters, not a single arrest in Ottawa, as racist, right? So I completely agree with you. I think that they are definitely, upper class progressives, overeducated, white progressives are using the real pain of people of color in order to enrich themselves and in order to wage a class war against the working class. So I completely agree with you.
I wanted to go back to your article, titled "When Progressives Side with Criminals," and you mentioned about the value of marriage, especially in the black community. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of things that progressives call culture wars are actually about class. They're all actually about economics. So marriage is a really good example. So you see a lot of poo-pooing of marriage, right? Like it's considered outre and backward to think that marriage is important, an important grounding unit for a family, for a community, for a nation. But there's a huge boom to being married, just in terms of like bottom line, your pocketbook. So married men make on average $30,000 more than unmarried men, and that's true with Black people too. So the poverty rate for Black Americans is 20%, but the poverty rate for Black Americans who are married is only 6%. The median income of a Black married couple is $90,000 for the husband, which is $40,000 above what the median income is for an unmarried Black man. So you see, there's a real economic side to getting married, and who takes advantage of that is, rich liberals, right? Rich progressives overwhelmingly are married. They're overwhelmingly getting the benefits of marriage while poo-pooing it and downplaying it and saying, oh, look at these backward conservatives who are voting for cultural issues at the expense of their economic interests, right? When they vote for conservatives, people with conservative values, but actually getting married is in their economic interest, and maybe working class people don't have the statistics at hand. They can look around their community. They can see which couples are making it, which couples are stable and which aren't. And there's something really awful about people taking advantage of this economic boon and then telling other people not to do so as well. And when you think specifically of the Black community, the ways in which liberal policies have incentivized not getting married in terms of welfare for single mothers, they essentially have been handicapping this community where about 70% of children are born out of wedlock, which is the number one predictor for whether a child will be downwardly mobile.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the great takeaways from Charles Murray's book, Coming Apart, which is those rich white leftists don't preach what they practice. They practice marriage, they practice fastidiousness, they save, they invest, but they won't preach that in terms of public policy. They live it, but they won't preach it because there's this little scam that they're running, as we were describing. Batya Ungar-Sargon, deputy opinion editor at Newsweek and author of Bad News: How Woke Media is Undermining Democracy. Batya, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and thank you for covering these important issues. Take care.
Thanks, you too. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Hi, friends. This is Katie Pavlich from townhall.com. The liberal media and big tech are working overtime to promote the left's anti-American agenda and silence me and the reporters on our team at Town Hall. We have to bring the truth to the American people, free from the spin of big media and the censorship of those big tech companies. We're constantly covering the news that matters, exposing the COVID lies, the leftist rot and crime surge in our cities, the illegal alien crisis at our southern border, and all of Joe Biden's unconstitutional overreach, including the critical race theory attacks on our children and grandchildren by school boards and the Department of Justice. I hope you'll support our vital team of conservative journalists today. You can do so by going to townhallaction.com. While cancel culture and big tech comes for us, the direct support of our VIP members helps make us uncancelable. Please join our team by becoming a VIP member at townhallaction.com. That's townhallaction.com.
Gentlemen, there's a lot of people talking about testosterone, but do your homework and be sure to choose a provider you can trust. I recommend my friends at Low T Center. For several years now, Low T Center has been the choice for me, and there are many reasons why. Low T Center exclusively specializes in men's wellness. They check all your levels, not just your testosterone. They determine the cause of any symptoms you may be having and whether you are a candidate for low T or something else like low thyroid or even sleep apnea. Their annual health assessment is typically 100% covered by health insurance, and it's thorough, checking everything from PSA, which is your prostate levels, thyroid, liver and kidney function, cholesterol, glucose levels, and more. Low T Center has affordable and convenient options for treatment, including monitored self-inject treatment that ships directly